What would you do if you found a wild bobcat trapped and swarmed by angry bees right in your backyard? Would you risk your safety to help a creature most people fear, or look away and let nature take its course? Stay with this story, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about courage, kindness, and where wildness truly belongs. The sky was that searing shade of blue that only happens at the peak of summer, with the sun burning straight overhead and the air trembling just above the pavement. Lawnmowers hummed like oversized insects in distant yards, and a couple of kids' bikes lay abandoned in the grass, one tire spinning lazily. The scent of cut grass mixed with something faintly metallic, a sign that Evan Parker's new life had truly begun here. On the edge of Suburbia, where the woods pressed right up against the back fences, and anything could wander through. Evan, 35, moved with a kind of careful uncertainty, the shadow of divorce still trailing him like the faint smell of old cologne. His 11-year-old daughter, Mia, darted ahead, her messy ponytail bobbing as she circled the backyard. They'd just finished stacking some cardboard boxes in the garage. New house, new routines, everything slightly off balance. "Dad, come on!" Mia called. She was poking around by the wooden fence, where the grass grew high and tangled, almost wild. "In a sec," Evan replied, distracted, fiddling with the old push mower he'd inherited from the previous owner. It sputtered and coughed, refusing to start. He wiped sweat from his brow, missing the days when someone else would call out, "Dinner's ready," or "Let's take a break." But that was before. A sudden shrill screech sliced through the afternoon, a sound so raw, so wild, that for a second Evan thought a neighbor's kid had fallen off a bike. But then it came again, more desperate, rising and falling in a wavering tremolo that was both animal and utterly alien in the tame world of trimmed lawns and patio furniture. "Dad!" Mia's voice cracked with urgency. "Come quick! Something's wrong!" Evan dropped the mower handle and jogged toward her, heart thudding. "What is it?" "Back there, behind the shed, there's something—" Her eyes were wide, pupils blown with fear or wonder. Evan couldn't tell. He rounded the corner, ducking under a low-hanging branch, and saw it. A patch of tall grass flattened and churned up, as if something had thrashed and rolled there. In the center, sprawled awkwardly against the battered wooden fence, was a wild bobcat. At first, Evan froze. The animal was bigger than he'd imagined, muscles rippling under its spotted, tawny coat. But its chest heaved with exhaustion, sides rising and falling so quickly it looked unnatural. And then he saw why. The bobcat was half collapsed, her hindquarters shivering, eyes glazed but burning with pain and fear. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing. All around her, swarming, roiling, pulsing, was a living cloud of bees. Not just a few, but hundreds, maybe thousands, crawling over her back, stinging in waves. The air was thick with their angry hum, a sound that vibrated right down to Evan's bones. He took a step back, instinct screaming danger. "Stay behind me, Mia." But Mia didn't listen. "Dad, look!" Evan blinked, and for a second, he didn't understand what she was pointing at. Then he saw them. Two tiny kittens, no bigger than squirrels, huddled under the mother bobcat's body, pressed so tight against her belly they were almost invisible. Their eyes squeezed shut, ears flattened, but they were trembling, terrified, helpless, and dangerously exposed to the swarm. The whole tableau was surreal: wildness and vulnerability, danger and innocence, all tangled together in the backyard of a house he'd barely begun to call home. Evan's mind raced. Should he intervene? Every childhood lesson, every nature documentary, every stern warning about letting nature take its course screamed at him to keep away. Bobcats were dangerous. One wrong move and those teeth and claws would tear into him. And the bees, just the thought of stepping into that seething cloud made his skin crawl. But Mia was already moving closer, her voice trembling. "Dad, she's just trying to protect her babies." Evan grabbed her shoulder. "Mia, stop. We can't, but they'll die if we don't help." She was pleading now, voice thin, shaking. "We have to do something." Evan hesitated, torn between every parental instinct. Keep his child safe. Don't meddle with wild animals. Don't make things worse. But the look on Mia's face, determined, pleading, heartbreakingly brave, hit him harder than any bee sting ever could. He glanced back at the yard, at the safe world of sprinklers and soccer balls and iced tea on the porch. It felt impossibly far away. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked. A mower shut off, and for a moment, the only sound was the frantic buzzing of the bees and the ragged breathing of the bobcat. The world had narrowed to this moment, this impossible choice. "Okay," Evan said, voice low. "We'll try to help. But you stay right behind me, Mia. No arguments." She nodded, swallowing hard. For a moment, she looked like a little girl again, scared, hopeful, and utterly trusting. As they moved closer, the bees swarmed angrily, bouncing off Evan's arms, crawling into his hair. The bobcat hissed, tried to rise, but collapsed again, too weak to defend herself or her kittens. One kitten gave a pitiful mewl, barely audible over the noise. Evan realized, in that split second, that nothing would ever be the same. Sometimes you don't get to choose the wild things that crash into your life. Sometimes, all you can do is stand your ground, reach out a trembling hand, and hope you're brave enough to face whatever comes next. And as the bees thickened and the summer air pulsed with danger, Evan knew this was the moment that would define everything, for him, for Mia, and for the wild lives tangled in the tall grass at the edge of their world. Mia's hand clutched Evan's arm, her grip fierce, eyes wide with a mix of fear and a stubborn, shining hope. The sun hammered down, hot enough that sweat trickled down Evan's back as he scanned the scene. The bobcat mother was losing her fight. Her head drooped, breathing fast and shallow, bees crawling over her face, legs twitching helplessly. The kittens, barely old enough to wobble, pressed themselves against her, tiny bodies shivering as a few stray bees landed on their soft fur. "She's just trying to save them," Mia whispered, voice trembling. Evan's mind raced. He needed a plan, fast. He thought of animal documentaries, memories of his own childhood camping trips, survival shows he'd half-watched with Mia on rainy weekends. Smoke, water, bees hated both, right? He glanced at the shed and sprinted across the patchy lawn, heart pounding. In one motion, he grabbed the battered garden hose, yanked it toward the scene, twisted the spigot, and let cold water gush out. Mia ran to the porch, grabbed his old rain jacket from the coat rack, 2 sizes too big, and hurried back, wrapping it around her small frame like armor. "Stay back, Mia," Evan called. Though he knew she wouldn't listen, she hesitated for half a heartbeat, then raced for the back step. "I'm helping!" she shouted. Evan found an old citronella candle in a box by the door, half melted, from the last owner's failed attempt at a mosquito-free summer. He flicked his lighter, and a thin wisp of smoke drifted into the air, instantly swallowed by the haze of bees. Mia, jacket zipped up, face determined, grabbed the garden gloves from a hook and pulled them onto her tiny hands. They moved as a unit. Evan sprayed a misty arc of water, creating a damp buffer around the bobcat and kittens, while Mia placed the citronella candle closer, waving her arms to disperse the smoke. The bees, angry and confused, buzzed around their faces, stingers pricking through sleeves and hair. Evan felt the first sharp burn on his neck, then another on his hand. He winced, gritted his teeth, and kept moving forward, shielding Mia with his body. "Dad, there's so many!" Mia choked, voice muffled by the jacket collar. "I know, honey. Just keep close. We're almost there," he said, though his heart hammered with doubt. They reached the bobcat, who managed a low growl. Evan froze, meeting the animal's fever-bright eyes, yellow, wild, terrified, but not threatening. "Easy, girl," he murmured, inching closer. "We're not here to hurt you." The bees crawled in angry waves over her body, legs quivering with every sting. Mia's breath came in fast little puffs. With one gloved hand, Mia reached out, heart in her throat, and gently lifted one of the kittens. It barely moved, legs limp, fur matted with sweat and stings. "I got her, Dad!" she cried. "Good. Take her. Go!" Evan ordered, voice raw. Mia scurried backward, holding the kitten tight. Evan, ignoring the furious stings now peppering his arms and face, crouched low and slid his arms under the bobcat mother. Her body was shockingly light for such a fierce creature. She hissed, weakly, and for a terrifying second, Evan thought she might claw his face, but she didn't. Instead, she let out a low, rasping yowl, as if begging him not to let her babies go. With the other hand, Evan scooped the second kitten. Its eyes flickered open, dazed and glassy, and tucked it against his chest. The bees thickened, swirling, stingers lashing his ears, his scalp, his hands. Every nerve screamed to run, but he didn't. Mia was already at the screened porch, holding the door open with her foot. Kitten clutched to her chest. "Come on, Dad, hurry!" Evan staggered, nearly tripping on the uneven grass. Bobcat mother draped in his arms. Both kittens pressed against him. The world narrowed to the porch. The hope of safety. The sound of Mia's frantic voice. He stumbled up the steps, lungs burning, the last bees still clinging to his hair and sleeves. Mia slammed the porch door behind him, then immediately dropped to her knees, cradling the limp kitten in her arms. Evan collapsed onto the wicker sofa, the bobcat mother slipping from his grip onto the porch rug, kittens tumbling after her. He gasped, chest heaving, as he tore off his shirt and shook out the last of the bees. Both of them were shaking, hands dotted with fresh stings, faces flushed and red. The air in the porch was thick and hot, the hum of bees now muffled by the screens. The mother bobcat barely moved. Her breath came in ragged gulps, her eyes closing and opening as if she might slip away at any moment. The kittens, miraculously, were alive, though covered in red welts and barely moving. Mia's hands shook as she stroked the kitten's tiny head. "Is she going to die?" she whispered. "I don't know," Evan admitted, voice soft and raw. "But we did everything we could." They sat there for a long moment, the afternoon sun painting stripes across the floor, sweat and adrenaline making every heartbeat echo. Outside, the swarm raged on, a few bees still banging against the screen, determined to defend their destroyed nest. Evan reached for Mia, pulling her into a tight, desperate hug. "You were so brave," he said, kissing the top of her head. "You did good, kiddo." She didn't answer, just squeezed him tighter. For a moment, Evan let himself believe they were safe. But outside, the wild still pressed close, and the crisis was far from over. The bobcat family huddled on the rug, their fate now tangled with Evan and Mia's in ways none of them could have imagined. And as the last bees finally drifted away, Evan knew that nothing about this summer would be simple or safe ever again. The world inside the screened porch felt strangely distant from the chaos they'd just escaped. Evan's skin still buzzed from adrenaline, his arms dotted with angry red welts where the bees had found flesh. Mia sat on the faded rug, her knees drawn to her chest, holding one of the bobcat kittens with both hands, cradling it like something impossibly fragile. The air was thick and hot, heavy with the scent of wet fur, sweat, and the faint, bittersweet tinge of honey drifting from Mia's open palm. The mother bobcat lay sprawled across the porch, belly rising and falling in sharp, uneven movements. Her sides were covered in angry bumps, fur patchy and damp, blood and venom seeping from dozens of tiny wounds. The other kitten lay beside her, mewling softly, eyes glassy and unfocused. Evan, moving on autopilot, stumbled to the kitchen. He ran cold water over a dish towel, pressed it to his burning neck, then filled a bowl with ice cubes and hurried back. Mia looked up as he knelt beside her, handing her the towel. "Put this on the stings," he said quietly. Mia pressed the cold towel against the kitten's puffy face. Watching its breathing slow, she brushed the kitten's tiny head with her thumb, eyes shining with worry. "Is she going to die, Dad?" Evan shook his head, though doubt clawed at his insides. "We'll do everything we can, sweetheart." He stood, rubbing at a welt on his arm, and fished out his phone. His hands trembled as he typed, "Wildlife Emergency Rescue." He tried the number at the top of the search results. No answer, just a generic voicemail. It was Sunday, and every office was closed. Outside, the porch screens vibrated as the last straggling bees battered against the mesh, determined to get in. The hum slowly faded as the swarm dissipated, leaving behind a soft, uneasy silence. Mia watched the mother bobcat, her eyes full of empathy and worry. She chewed her lower lip, then ducked into the kitchen, rummaging in the pantry. She returned with a jar of honey, unscrewed the lid, and dipped her finger in. "Mom used to put honey on my bug bites," she said quietly. "Said it draws the poison out." She dabbed a little onto the kitten's stung ear, her movements gentle, hopeful. Evan watched, torn between pride and a dull ache of helplessness. He tried the emergency number again. Still nothing. "I'm sorry, it's no use. No one's picking up." He knelt beside the mother bobcat, hands hovering uncertainly. She opened her eyes, fixing him with a golden, wary stare, but didn't move. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Mia's voice was barely a whisper. "She looks scared, Dad. Like she thinks we're going to hurt her." "We're not," Evan promised, though his voice shook. "We're not." Minutes stretched, thick and slow. Mia kept busy fetching more ice from the freezer, laying cold packs on the bobcat's side. She stroked the kittens gently, whispering nonsense. Songs from when she was small, promises she didn't know how to keep. Evan sat on the floor, his own hands trembling, stings throbbing. The pain was nothing compared to the fear. What if the mother died right here? What if the kittens didn't make it? What would Mia remember about this day? His failure or his effort? Would she see him as brave, or just as lost as she felt? He leaned his head back against the wall, eyes closed. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint mewling of the kittens and the ragged breaths of their mother. Mia's voice was soft, a confession surfacing through the quiet. "Dad, do you think she feels like she doesn't belong here?" Evan opened his eyes, surprised. "What do you mean?" She wouldn't meet his gaze. I feel like that sometimes, like I'm the stray cat, you know?" Her thumb rubbed circles on the kitten's back. "After Mom left, after we moved, I don't fit. At school, I keep waiting for someone to notice I'm not supposed to be there." Evan's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her it wasn't true, that she belonged anywhere, everywhere. But he remembered the ache of starting over, the hollow feeling after the divorce, the sense of drifting between old friends and new neighborhoods, between being someone's husband and just being lost. He reached for her hand, squeezed it gently. I know how that feels, kiddo. But you're not alone, not really. Not now. They sat together, the afternoon light slipping toward gold, the world narrowing to the circle of their small makeshift sanctuary. Mia sniffled, wiped her eyes with the sleeve of Evan's old jacket. Outside, somewhere in the neighborhood, a siren wailed, a reminder that the rest of the world hadn't paused. Evan tried the emergency number one more time. Still no answer. The mother bobcat stirred, lifting her head just enough to nudge one of the kittens closer with her nose. Her eyes flickered, a wary truce settling between wild and tame, pain and hope. Mia smiled through tears, leaning closer. Hey, she whispered. It's okay. We're gonna take care of you. Promise. Evan watched, his heart swelling with something fierce and proud. He didn't have all the answers, maybe he never would, but he knew this. Today, they'd stood together in the face of fear and did what they could. Sometimes, that was enough. As dusk edged the sky with purple, Evan fetched an old blanket, draped it around Mia's shoulders. The porch for now was a haven, a fragile peace hovering between worlds. Outside, the wild waited. Inside, hope flickered, delicate and stubborn, refusing to be snuffed out. Night pressed in against the porch, settling over the neighborhood in a hush broken only by the distant whir of a streetlight and the croak of frogs in the empty lot beyond the fence. Inside, the screened porch glowed with the soft, uncertain warmth of a table lamp, its yellow light stretching long shadows across the rug. Evan sat with his back against the wall, an ice pack pressed to the welt on his cheek, while Mia curled beside him under the old blanket, one kitten tucked into the crook of her arm. The bobcat mother was sprawled on her side, breathing shallow but steady, her head lifted just enough to keep an eye on both her kittens, and on Evan and Mia. Her ears flicked at every sound. Every few minutes her tail would twitch in agitation, but she made no move to attack. She was too weak for that now, her energy spent on surviving and keeping her kittens close. For a long while they didn't talk. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind exhaustion and a slow, throbbing ache from the bee stings. Evan's arms felt heavy. Mia blinked hard, fighting sleep, her hand moving gently over the kitten's head. Evan kept glancing at the bobcat, nerves jangling every time her golden eyes caught his. Yet, as the minutes slipped by, he saw something soften in her gaze, a flicker of understanding, a thread of trust strung taut between their worlds. "Can I touch her?" Mia whispered at last, voice scratchy with fatigue and hope. Evan hesitated. "Maybe not yet, honey. She's scared and hurting." "I just want her to know we're not bad," Mia said, her fingers tightening around the kitten. "That we're helping." Evan nodded. He understood that need, the longing to reassure, to make things right, even with a wild animal that might never trust them. Sometimes you show you care just by being close. Sometimes that's enough. Mia seemed to accept that, at least for the moment. The hours passed in a slow rhythm, Evan pressing ice to his stings, Mia tending to the kittens, the bobcat watching them all with wary, fever-bright eyes. Around midnight, Evan's skin felt hot and flushed, his head pounding. He brushed it off at first, but as the night deepened, chills crept over him. His arms, covered in stings, throbbed with dull pain, and he started shivering despite the muggy air. Mia noticed. "Dad, are you okay?" "Just tired, sweetheart," Evan said, forcing a smile. He didn't want her to worry, but the porch spun a little as he leaned back, and he closed his eyes to steady himself. Mia sat up, folding the blanket around him and searching for the ice pack. "You have a fever," she said, her voice trembling. You need medicine. He managed a weak laugh. I'll be fine. Just need to rest. She brought him a glass of water, then sat at his side, keeping vigil while the house around them grew quiet. The only sound was the mother bobcat's steady, rasping breaths and the soft, anxious purring of the kittens. Sometime before dawn, Mia reached out to stroke one of the kittens. Her hand moved so gently that the bobcat didn't flinch. Instead, the wild mother watched her, then slowly, laboriously, nudged the second kitten closer to Mia, almost as if offering a gesture of thanks. Mia caught her breath. Dad, she trusts us. Look. Evan cracked open an eye, watching through the fog of exhaustion as Mia's hand trembled in the air, hovering over the kitten. The bobcat didn't move, her gaze fixed on Mia, something ancient and maternal in her stillness. Very softly, Mia began to talk, just a whisper, telling the bobcat about the stray cat she'd tried to rescue back in their old neighborhood, about how she'd always felt out of place since the divorce, how she wished she could do something big and brave. Her words floated through the quiet, settling into the space between wild and tame. The night deepened, the world outside shrinking to the small, illuminated island of the porch. Evan drifted in and out, fever dreams swirling with memories, packing boxes, slammed doors, Mia's tears on moving day, the terrifying sound of the bobcat's scream. Through it all, he heard Mia's voice, steady and true, building a fragile bridge to the animal before her. By sunrise, the fever had begun to break. Evan woke to find Mia asleep against his shoulder, the kittens nestled in the crook of her arm. The mother bobcat had shifted closer during the night, her body curled protectively around her young, her head only inches from Mia's hand. Evan sat up slowly, careful not to disturb them. He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the emergency wildlife number. But he paused, watching Mia and the bobcat sharing the same patch of morning light. Something had shifted, something vital and tender. He realized with a pang that this act, protecting the wild, letting Mia help, might be the first thing that had felt right since the divorce. For the first time in months, Evan felt the heaviness in his chest begin to ease. Maybe he and Mia weren't as lost as he thought. Maybe trust was a thread, fragile but real, spun between father and daughter, human and wild, just waiting for someone to be brave enough to hold on. Outside, the sun crept higher, gilding the backyard in gold. In the hush before the neighborhood woke, Evan allowed himself to hope, really hope, that this strange, wild night had changed them all, in ways none of them could yet imagine. The morning sun glinted off dew still clinging to the backyard grass, painting everything with a soft, forgiving glow. For a brief, perfect hour, the porch felt like its own world. Evan, Mia, and the battered bobcat family sealed inside their fragile sanctuary. The kittens slept curled beside their mother, who now watched Evan and Mia with wary acceptance, the wildness in her eyes edged with exhaustion, but no longer with fear. But peace never lasts. Around mid-morning, just as Mia tried coaxing one of the kittens to lap water from a saucer, a sharp rapping broke the calm, a brisk, insistent knock at the porch door. Evan startled, nearly spilling his coffee. Mia froze, her hand halfway to the kitten's head. On the other side of the screen, standing in pressed slacks and a floral blouse, was Mrs. Cartwright, their neighbor from across the street, the self-declared watchful eye of the entire block. She peered in, lips pursed, eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "Mr. Parker?" she called, craning her neck to see around the curtain. "Is everything all right over there?" Evan's heart skipped. He tried to smile, stepping between Mrs. Cartwright and the huddled Bobcat family. "Morning, Mrs. Cartwright. Just a little, wildlife excitement last night." Her gaze swept the porch, landing squarely on the mother Bobcat and her kittens. "My word," she exclaimed, voice rising. "Is that a wild animal? Inside your home?" Mia opened her mouth, but Evan shot her a look. "Don't say anything. We're, keeping an eye on them until animal rescue can come." He lied, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. But Mrs. Cartwright wasn't easily fooled. "You know, it's highly irresponsible, dangerous even, to harbor predators around children. I've already called animal control. I told them there's a bobcat loose on the block." Mia's face went pale. "Dad," she whispered, clutching the nearest kitten tight. The mother bobcat let out a weak, protective growl. "Please, Mrs. Cartwright, everything's under control," Evan tried, but she was already walking away, phone pressed to her ear, mouth moving fast. A knot of dread tightened in Evan's stomach. He crouched beside Mia, voice low and urgent. "Listen, honey, animal control will have to check this out, but sometimes what's right and what's legal aren't always the same." Mia's lower lip trembled. "What if they take her? What if they hurt her?" Evan shook his head, desperate to reassure her, desperate to believe it himself. "I won't let anything bad happen. We'll figure it out." Mia pressed her face into his shoulder, stifling a sob. Evan's mind spun. Animal rescue had never answered. He needed help, fast. He scrolled frantically through his contacts and landed on a familiar name. Dr. Callahan. They hadn't spoken much since high school, but word around town was Callahan had become a vet. A good one. Evan dialed, fingers trembling. The line rang. Just as Evan was about to give up, a gruff, tired voice answered. "Callahan." "Ben, hey, it's Evan Parker from Eastview, class of 08. A pause, then a faint, incredulous laugh. "Evan? Parker? What the hell, man?" Evan didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Listen, Ben. I know this is crazy. I've got a mother bobcat and 2 kittens on my porch. They're half dead from bee stings, and animal control's coming. Please, can you help?" A long silence. Then Callahan's tone changed, sharp and businesslike. "You said bee stings? How bad?" "Bad. The mom's barely conscious. Kittens are moving, but weak. I don't know what to do." Callahan sighed, muttering under his breath. "All right. I'll be there tonight. Don't let anyone in. Don't let them see the animals. And if animal control shows up, stall." Evan's relief was immediate, though anxiety lingered. "How will you—" "I'll come disguised. Pizza delivery, something like that. Text me your address." The line went dead. Mia watched Evan, eyes red-rimmed but hopeful. "Is he coming?" "He's coming," Evan promised, pulling her into a hug. "We just have to hold on until tonight." Outside, a white animal control van crept down the street, parking a few houses away. 2 uniformed officers stepped out, eyeing Evan's property, radioing updates to someone unseen. Evan's stomach dropped. He hurried to close the porch blinds and pulled Mia into the house. "We need to keep quiet. Don't let anyone see us. Stay away from the windows." Mia crouched in the hallway, the kitten pressed to her chest. "I'm scared, Dad. What if they take them?" Evan squeezed her hand. "We'll find a way, I promise." The rest of the day passed in tense, breathless waiting. Every time a car slowed outside, Mia tensed. Every knock at the door made Evan's heart leap to his throat. They took turns peeking through the blinds, watching as the animal control officers knocked on doors, talked to neighbors, and scribbled notes. Evan rehearsed stories in his head. Stray cats, nothing wild here, just a misunderstanding. But no one came to their door. By late afternoon, the van rolled away, leaving only a knot of dread in Evan's chest. When dusk finally crept across the lawn, the tension in the house reached a fever pitch. Mia paced, wringing her hands, whispering encouragements to the kittens and their mother. Evan checked his phone every 5 minutes, praying for a sign from Dr. Callahan. Just as the streetlights flickered on, Evan's phone buzzed. A single text. 10 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Mia stood by the porch, a bundle of nerves, while Evan paced, mind racing. Through the window, he saw a battered sedan roll to a stop at the curb. A figure emerged, pizza box in hand, ball cap pulled low. Dr. Callahan had arrived, and with him hope. If only they could make it through one more night. A humid dusk settled over the neighborhood as Dr. Ben Callahan strode up the walkway, a battered pizza box tucked under his arm, eyes flicking warily from porch to street. He wore faded jeans and a hoodie, his stethoscope hidden beneath the collar. For all the world, he looked like just another tired delivery guy, dropping off dinner for a family too busy to cook. But Evan recognized the old confidence in Ben's stride, and a surge of hope shot through him as he unlocked the door. "Evening, Doc," Evan whispered, glancing over his shoulder at the street. Ben slipped inside, closed the door fast, and handed the pizza box to Mia. "Play it cool. If anyone asks, I'm your uncle and we're having a pizza night." Mia nodded, clutching the box. Evan could see the tension in her shoulders, the exhaustion in her eyes, but also the thread of hope she'd been holding on to all day. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. Ben knelt on the porch rug, scanning the Bobcat and her kittens. "Tell me everything," he said, already opening his kit. Evan gave a quick rundown. The bee swarm, the stings, the fever, the kitten's limpness. Ben listened, silent and focused, hands already moving with practiced speed. He pulled on latex gloves, squinting at the mother Bobcat. "She's in rough shape. Pulse is weak. Could be anaphylactic shock." He nodded at Evan. "Help me steady her." The Bobcat tensed as Ben approached, ears flicking flat. Evan moved carefully, kneeling on the far side and hands open and slow. "Easy, girl," he murmured. "We're here to help." Ben produced a small syringe from his bag, flicking the air bubble out with a snap. "EpiPen for animals," he explained. "Let's hope she tolerates it." He injected the medicine just under the Bobcat's skin. The mother hissed, but she was too weak to fight. Mia flinched, but Evan squeezed her shoulder. "She'll be okay," he murmured, trying to convince both of them. "Let's treat the stings," Ben said, motioning to Mia. He showed her how to dab at the welts with antiseptic, his movements gentle as he worked over the Bobcat's battered body. He then checked the kittens. One was breathing shallowly, the other barely responsive. "These two need fluids fast, and something for the swelling." Ben produced a small bottle and filled a tiny syringe. "Hold her gently," he instructed, guiding Mia's hands around the weakest kitten. He showed her how to slide the dropper into the kitten's mouth, squeezing out the medicine in careful drips. Mia's hands shook, but she did it, eyes shining with a desperate, stubborn hope. Evan felt his throat tighten. He remembered helping Mia feed a stray once, years ago, the way her eyes had brightened when the kitten had finally purred. This was different. The stakes were real, life or death. While Mia tended the kittens, Ben and Evan turned their attention to the mother Bobcat. She was shivering, pupils wide, muscles twitching under the strain of the stings. "We need to keep her warm, keep her calm," Ben said. He pulled a fleece blanket from his bag, draping it over her haunches, careful to leave her head free. "I've seen cases like this before. Sometimes they turn around, sometimes they don't." Mia wouldn't hear it. She has to make it. She just has to. Ben offered a tired smile. You're doing great, kiddo. Animals know when someone's on their side. That helps more than you'd think. They worked through the next hour, cleaning wounds, syringing water into the kittens' mouths, pressing cold packs to the worst of the welts. The sun dipped lower, washing the porch in amber and shadow. Through it all, Evan kept watch on the street. Every flash of headlights, every neighbor walking a dog, set his nerves on edge. At one point, Mia gasped. A white van had turned onto their street, moving slowly, headlights off, animal control. Stay calm, Ben whispered, glancing out the window. Let them see nothing. They sat still, lights off, barely breathing, while the van idled in front of the house. Two officers stepped out, talking quietly, one glancing at a clipboard. Evan's heart hammered. What if they knocked? What if someone slipped, made a sound, and brought everything crashing down? But after a tense, endless minute, the officers got back in and drove off. Ben let out a long breath. Close call. Mia shivered. What if they come back? We have until morning, Ben said, wiping his forehead. After that, it's out of our hands. They'll have a warrant or backup. We need to move her tonight. Evan nodded, determination replacing the fear. We'll do whatever it takes. Ben rummaged through his kit, handing Mia a small bottle and a feeding syringe. She needs this every 2 hours, hydration and a little sugar. If you see the kittens panting or getting sluggish, do it again. No exceptions. Mia nodded, memorizing every instruction. Evan watched her. How grown up she looked, how fierce and steady, despite the fear. Ben packed his bag and rose, stretching tiredly. I'll be back at dawn. We'll move her then. Quiet, fast, before anyone's up. Before he left, he crouched beside Mia, meeting her eyes. You're brave, you know that? Braver than most adults I know. Keep them alive tonight, okay? Mia managed a tiny smile. I will. After Ben slipped out into the darkness, Evan locked the door behind him, every muscle tight with anxiety. The porch was quiet, except for the soft sounds of breathing, human and animal, all tangled together. Evan sat beside Mia, taking her hand. We'll get them through the night, he promised, voice steady. No matter what. They took turns keeping watch, dozing in snatches. Mia waking every 2 hours to feed the kittens. Evan tending to the mother bobcat's swelling. The hours crawled by, thick with tension, the wild pressing close on every side. Outside, the world slept, unaware of the fight for life happening behind the thin screen door. In the deepest part of the night, Mia whispered to Evan, I think she's getting better. She moved her paw. Evan squeezed her shoulder, hope blooming in his chest. So are we, kiddo. So are we. And as the first light bled into the sky, Evan knew. Whatever happened next, they were all in this together. And sometimes that was enough to tip the balance between fear and hope, wild and tame. The world was gray and quiet when Evan finally stirred, his face pressed into the rough weave of the porch couch. His mind surfaced through layers of exhaustion, disjointed dreams and memories from the night before. Syringes, shivering kittens, Mia's steady voice whispering encouragement, Ben's calm instructions, the bobcat mother's heaving breath. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then it all rushed back. The porch, the wild family depending on them, the threat of animal control looming like a storm. He checked the bobcat first. She lay curled on the blanket, breathing shallow but steady, her sides rising and falling in slow, regular motion. One kitten suckled at her belly, the other nestled between her forelegs, no longer limp but blinking at Evan with cloudy blue eyes. He felt a quiet surge of relief. Against the odds, they'd made it through the night. Dad? Mia's voice, thin but hopeful, drifted from the shadowy corner where she'd slept. Is she? She's still with us, he said softly, a faint smile creasing his face. Light crept across the yard, turning dew into silver. The Parker house was quiet, the neighborhood not yet awake. But time was running out. Evan checked his phone. Barely 5:30 a.m. Ben's text buzzed in his inbox. Outside, ready? Evan's pulse quickened. He nudged Mia gently. Come on, kiddo, it's time. She sat up, hair tangled, eyes wide but determined. Together they tiptoed into the kitchen, where Ben stood in the mudroom, ball cap pulled low, a large dog crate at his feet. The vet looked serious, sleep-deprived, but ready for anything. Here's the plan, Ben whispered, laying out a map of the area on the kitchen table. We'll head for the south side of the preserve. Back roads only. Evan, you'll drive. Mia, you sit with the crate and keep the kittens calm. If we get stopped, we're dropping off a stray dog at a friend's farm. Got it? Mia nodded, nerves and hope fighting for space in her chest. Moving quietly, Ben sedated the Bobcat with a tiny injection, just enough to keep her calm but not unconscious. The mother's eyelids fluttered, her breathing slowed, and she let herself be lifted without protest. With careful hands, Ben and Evan transferred her to the crate, covering her with a fleece blanket to muffle any sound. Mia tucked both kittens under the mother's chin, whispering encouragement with every move. A chorus of birds welcomed the dawn as they loaded the crate into the back of Evan's station wagon, draping it with towels and old coats. Ben rode shotgun, a fake vet bill, and paperwork clipped to a folder on his lap, while Mia curled up in the back, her arm threaded through the crate's bars, never breaking contact with the fragile family inside. They pulled away from the curb just as the neighborhood began to wake, porch lights flickering on, Mrs. Cartwright's blinds snapping open across the street. Evan kept his head down, heart pounding, every second expecting flashing lights or a shout. But the world remained ordinary, oblivious to the drama unfolding within the faded blue wagon. At the first stop sign, Ben spoke in a low voice. Turn left here, then right at the old water tower. We'll take the service road, less traffic, fewer eyes. Evan followed the directions, sweat prickling his palms, his mind racing through backup plans. Behind him, Mia murmured softly to the Bobcats, her courage a small, steady flame. As they neared the edge of town, Evan's worst fear materialized in the rearview mirror. A patrol car, creeping along behind them, its headlights flickering through the trees. Mia saw it too. Dad, she whispered, her hand tightening on the crate. Ben kept his cool, voice steady. Don't panic. Keep driving. If they pull us over, let me do the talking. The patrol car drew closer. Its lights flashed. Evan's stomach plummeted as he eased the car to the shoulder. An officer stepped out, not animal control, but a young cop in a crisp uniform, looking more bored than suspicious. Ben rolled down the window as the officer approached. Morning, officer. Everything all right? Just a routine stop. You folks local? The cop asked, eyeing the back seat. Ben smiled, sliding the paperwork through the window. We're headed to my cousin's place. She's got a rescue out by the preserve. Dropping off some animals for care, long night. The officer glanced at Mia, who cradled a towel-wrapped bundle. Everything okay back there, young lady? Mia nodded, conjuring tears and a trembling lip. My pet rabbit ran away last night, she sniffled, barely lying at all, her voice tiny. I didn't want to leave her, so we're trying to find her in the woods. That's all. The officer softened, glancing at the crate but not peering inside. Hope you find her, kiddo. You folks drive safe now. Evan's heart thudded painfully as they pulled back onto the road, the patrol car fading behind them, They reached the edge of the preserve as dawn brightened the treetops. The woods loomed, deep, green, alive with birdsong. Ben unlocked the crate, Evan and Mia flanking him, ready to catch or shield if the mother bobcat woke too soon. Ben knelt by a tangle of roots, easing the bobcat out. She stirred, groggy but alert, the kittens mewling softly as Mia placed them beside her. For a long moment, the wild cat looked back, her golden eyes meeting Evan's. Then she let out a rasping cry, a sound of thanks or farewell, no one could tell, and with surprising strength, nudged her kittens into the undergrowth. They vanished, silent and ghost-like into the green shadows. Mia sagged against Evan, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Do you think they'll be okay?" she asked, voice trembling. Ben rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You gave them a chance no one else would. That's more than most ever get." Evan hugged her tight, pride and sorrow mingling. "Sometimes that's all any of us can do, Mia. We help, and then we let go." As the sun rose above the trees, casting long rays through the wild grass, the Parker family stood together, watching the world reclaim its wildest children, and feeling, for the first time in a long while, like they belonged. Back home, the house felt strangely silent, every room still echoing with the memory of their frantic escape at dawn. Evan sank onto the porch steps, the early sun bright against his closed eyelids, the air thick with the sweetness of new grass. He still felt the tension in his shoulders, the phantom buzzing of bees in his ears, the surge of adrenaline that hadn't quite faded. Mia moved quietly around the kitchen, filling 2 glasses with water, her face pinched with worry and fatigue. She set one down next to Evan and sat beside him, her knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. The two of them stared at the backyard, where the wildness of last night seemed almost impossible now. The grass undisturbed, the bees gone, the only sound a distant mower starting up 2 houses over. Evan reached over, squeezed her shoulder. "You okay?" Mia nodded, then shook her head. "I keep thinking about her. What if animal control finds them? What if she's too weak? I wish we could have stayed and watched." He let out a tired breath. "Me too, kiddo. But she's better off out there in the wild. That's where she belongs." He tried to believe it. He wanted to. The day dragged on. Evan found himself staring at the woods beyond the fence, looking for any movement, any sign. A flash of fur, a stirring of branches. Mia kept busy, cleaning up the porch, collecting the discarded blankets, tucking the empty crate under the table. She left a bowl of water just beyond the back fence where the grass grew thickest. By mid-afternoon, restlessness won out over exhaustion. Mia sat on the porch steps, sketching the bobcat mother and kittens from memory on the back of a grocery receipt. Her pencil racing, erasing, racing again. Evan checked his phone for messages from Ben, but there was nothing. No updates, no warnings. The world seemed to have snapped back to normal, but neither of them could shake the feeling that everything had changed. Later, while Evan was making sandwiches for lunch, Mia rushed in, breathless. "Dad, come look!" He followed her to the edge of the yard, where the tall grass met the shadow of the woods. There, pressed lightly into the mud, were paw prints, 3 sets, 1 large and 2 tiny. Evan crouched, his heart thumping. He touched the print, feeling the lingering warmth of life. The undeniable proof that the bobcat and her kittens had made it through the first day on their own. "She came back," Mia whispered, almost in awe. She set the bowl of water closer to the tracks, then paused, spotting something pale caught in the brambles. A tuft of golden fur, snagged on a thorn. She lifted it, grinning through tears. That night, Mia hardly slept. She peered through the back window with a flashlight, hopeful, anxious, waiting for a sign. Evan tried to convince her to rest, but he knew the feeling. He too found himself staring at the backyard, listening for the sounds of wildness, the secret life beyond their fence. A couple days passed like this, waiting, hoping, longing for closure. On the third night, as the air cooled and the streetlights flickered on, Evan's phone chimed. He glanced at the screen. A message from Ben, along with a grainy photo snapped from a trail camera set up at the edge of the preserve. The image was blurred, but unmistakable. The bobcat mother, thinner but standing tall, her fur patchy but her eyes fierce. In her mouth, dangling by the scruff, was a kitten, eyes wide and shining. Behind her, another kitten scurried through the tall grass, tail high, following its mother's every step. Mia squealed with joy. "Dad, look! She's alive! They're all alive!" Evan felt a wave of relief, so deep and sudden he had to sit down. He pulled Mia into a hug, both of them laughing, crying, not caring who might see them from the street. The ache in his chest loosened. A knot of fear and worry finally untied. The next day, Mia insisted on leaving out more water, bits of cooked chicken, a trail of treats leading from the yard to the edge of the woods. That night, the bowl was empty, and fresh prints marked the damp soil. A neighbor, seeing Mia at the fence, came over with his own news. A motion-activated camera in his backyard had captured the Bobcat family at sunrise. Mother and kittens slipping through the shadows, wild and wary, but very much alive. Life slowly returned to its rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted for Evan and Mia. They found themselves looking out for wild tracks, listening for the far-off cry of the bobcat mother. The ordinary world, school, work, chores, felt smaller, less urgent after what they'd been through. Mia brought her drawing to school, showing it to a classmate who just moved in down the block. She told the story, leaving out the secret parts but holding tight to the magic. The other girl listened, wide-eyed, and soon they were whispering about animals and adventures during lunch. A new friendship kindled on the edge of wildness. Evan, too, found himself reaching out, joining a local wildlife group, telling their story not as a confession, but as a lesson in compassion and courage. He volunteered for early morning cleanups at the preserve, learning the names of other creatures who shared their borderland home. And every night, as dusk settled over the yard, Mia left water and waited, sometimes spotting a flash of golden fur, sometimes finding only paw prints and hope. In the gentle hush between day and night, she'd sit with Evan, arms around each other, listening to the world breathe. For in saving something wild, they'd found their own hearts, braver, bigger, more open than before. Days slipped by, each one softer and quieter than the last, as the summer's edge wore down to a gentler rhythm. The neighborhood, oblivious to the drama that had played out on Evan and Mia's porch, settled back into its routines. Sprinklers clicked on every morning, bikes rolled past in the afternoon, and the distant hum of lawnmowers filled the spaces between. For Evan and Mia, though, nothing felt quite the same. Mia seemed lighter. Where once she moved through the world with her head low and her shoulders hunched, now she walked with a certain quiet pride. A girl who had stood face to face with wildness and had not backed down. At school, her bobcat drawing made its rounds among classmates, sparking questions and, for the first time since moving, real conversations. When a new girl, Sadie, plopped down beside her at lunch, Mia shared the story, leaving out the risky details, but not the courage. Soon, the two were inseparable, whispering about animals and making plans to build their own backyard wildlife rescue club. Evan noticed changes in himself, too. The old heaviness from the divorce seemed to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism he hadn't felt in years. He joined a local wildlife advocacy group, his story about the Bobcat family finding new life as a message for coexistence and compassion. At meetings, he listened and learned, discovering how much beauty and struggle existed at the thin border between wild and tame. But there were other lessons, too, quieter ones that came in the in-between hours, when the house was still and the memories of that day flickered to the surface. One Sunday morning, Evan and Mia sat on the porch, watching blue jays dart from branch to branch. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't helped them?" Mia asked, tracing circles in the condensation on her glass of lemonade. Evan nodded. "I do. Sometimes I think about all the little decisions we make. When to step in, when to let go. There's not always a clear answer." He paused, then added, "But I'm glad we tried, Mia, no matter what." Mia looked thoughtful, then smiled. "Me too." They talked about courage, the quiet kind that comes not from never being scared, but from acting anyway. About rules and risks, about how sometimes doing the right thing means breaking with what's safe or expected. Mia confided that, after the rescue, she didn't feel like such an outsider anymore. Not just at school, but inside her own skin. "It's like being stung," she said. "It hurts, but then you realize you can get through it, and you're stronger." Evan laughed softly, ruffling her hair. "You're a tough kid, Mia Parker." "Guess I had a good teacher," she shot back, grinning. Sometimes healing came in small, surprising ways. Mia and Sadie set up a birdbath near the woods, leaving bits of bread and seed for passing creatures. They watched through binoculars, tracking squirrels and rabbits, once even catching a glimpse of a fox slipping through the dusk. Each new animal felt like a secret handshake, a nod from the wild that said, "You belong here, too." Evan found himself lingering longer by the window in the evenings, watching the shadows deepen along the tree line. Once he caught sight of the bobcat mother, her silhouette framed by moonlight, a kitten close at her heels. He didn't call out, didn't move, just watched, breath held, feeling a strange peace settle over him. Sometimes, letting go was the bravest thing of all. He told the story at the next wildlife group meeting, careful to leave out names and locations. People listened, some nodding, others wide-eyed. One older woman, gray hair in a tight bun, voice gentle, said, "You didn't just save them. You taught your daughter what it means to care for something bigger than herself." That stayed with him, echoing in his mind when he worried about having done too much, or not enough. Was it right to interfere? Had they made things worse? The doubts would surface late at night, but each morning brought fresh paw prints by the water bowl, new evidence that the wild had survived, and maybe, just maybe, had learned to trust a little too. For Mia, the world felt wider now. She found herself joining in at recess, laughing more, even daring to stand up for a classmate when some kids started teasing. "Don't be mean," she said, voice steady. "You never know what someone's going through." At home, she shared stories with Evan about her day, little triumphs and setbacks, the growing pains of someone learning her place in a new school and a changing world. Evan listened, grateful for every word, every moment that felt less like surviving and more like living. One night, as thunder rumbled in the distance and rain spattered the window panes, Evan and Mia sat at the kitchen table, each lost in thought. Finally, Evan spoke. "You know, I think that Bobcat taught us as much as we taught her." Mia smiled, a soft light in her eyes. She taught me that even when you're scared and everything hurts, you can still protect the people you love, and that sometimes you need help from others to get through. Evan nodded, a lump in his throat. Sometimes you do. The rain eased, leaving the world outside washed and new. As they cleared the table, Mia peeked through the window, searching for glowing eyes at the wood's edge. She didn't see any, but she didn't need to. The lesson remained, quiet and steady. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the whisper that says, "Try again tomorrow." And so, as summer slipped quietly toward fall, Evan and Mia found themselves stronger, more open, and more connected. To each other, to their neighbors, and to the wild, humming life that danced just beyond their backyard fence. Months passed. The air softened from the humid haze of summer into the crisp, golden edges of fall. Leaves turned, tumbling in slow-motion dances across the Parker backyard, and sunlight grew more precious with every shortening day. Still, every time Evan and Mia walked out their back door, the place seemed changed, wilder, deeper, connected to something much larger than themselves. Their days fell into a gentle rhythm. Mornings brought new routines. Evan with his coffee on the porch, Mia pulling on her boots before school, always scanning the edge of the woods for any sign, a paw print, a flicker of movement, a hint that their wild visitors had not gone far. The old water bowl by the fence never stayed empty for long. Sometimes, small tracks in the mud made them smile, a silent thanks, perhaps, from the Bobcat family they'd once sheltered. On weekends, father and daughter set out with gardening gloves and shovels, determined to make the yard friendlier for all creatures, wild and tame. Together, they dug up a patch along the fence and scattered seeds for bee-friendly flowers, coneflowers, sunflowers, black-eyed Susans, and wild lupines. Mia pressed each seed into the soil with care, whispering wishes under her breath. Stay safe. Grow strong. Come home. Evan watched her, marveling at the quiet hope she'd carried through all the chaos and fear. As the days grew cooler, the flowers bloomed, drawing bees back to the yard. But this time, it was a gentle buzz, an agreement, not a storm. Mia laughed as she watched the bees flit from blossom to blossom, remembering the terror of that long-ago afternoon. "It's like they know we're on their side now," she said. Evan nodded, running his fingers through the petals. "I think they do. They learned to live with wildness as a neighbor, respectful, curious, always a little cautious. At night, the sounds of the woods felt like a lullaby, the hoot of an owl, the soft rustle of leaves, the far-off yowl of a cat, answered sometimes by a fox or the sharp warning bark of a deer. Each sound wove itself into their new sense of home, a gentle reminder that their lives were now braided together with the world beyond the fence. Autumn brought its own changes. Mia's confidence blossomed. Her circle of friends widened, her laughter louder and easier. She organized the first meeting of the Backyard Wildlife Rescue Club with Sadie, inviting classmates to build birdhouses, plant milkweed, and patrol for injured animals. Evan found himself fielding questions from curious parents, his story of the Bobcat rescue slowly becoming a legend, whispered at school events and neighborhood potlucks. He sometimes wondered how much of it people really believed. But he didn't mind. What mattered was the lesson, the shift in hearts, adults looking twice before clearing brush, kids peeking through fences instead of shrinking back from the woods. Compassion had taken root alongside the wildflowers. Late in the season, on a warm twilight evening, Evan and Mia found themselves side by side on the porch, watching the last rays of sun sink behind the trees. The yard was quiet, except for the lazy hum of bees and the distant call of crickets. Mia leaned her head on Evan's shoulder, both of them lost in the hush of dusk. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the far edge of the yard. Evan sat up, squinting into the gathering gloom. There, half hidden in the tall grass, stood the mother bobcat. Her coat was full and glossy, her eyes clear, her body strong. Flanking her, two almost grown kittens peeked from behind a clump of goldenrod, their movements cautious but curious. Mia gasped, grabbing Evan's hand. Together they watched in perfect silence as the bobcat family paused at the boundary where wild met tame. For a long moment, the mother met Evan's gaze, an ancient golden stare full of recognition and something close to gratitude. Then, with a low, rumbling purr, she slipped away into the tall grass, her kittens bounding after her. The wild family vanished as quietly as they'd come. Evan and Mia stayed on the porch, arms wrapped around each other, hearts full. No words were needed. The lesson lingered in the fading light, deeper than any moral in a storybook. Sometimes, being stung is the price of doing the right thing. Sometimes the wounds you carry are the proof that you cared enough to act. They watched the yard as darkness deepened, the bee-friendly flowers nodding in the night breeze. For the first time in a long while, Evan felt whole. Not just as a father, but as a man who'd faced the wild and chosen kindness, again and again. Mia, strong and steady beside him, was no longer a stranger to herself or her world. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Mia whispered. "Maybe," Evan said softly. "But even if we don't, we know they're out there. That's enough." The stars came out, one by one, as the neighborhood fell asleep. Mia rested her head on Evan's chest, both of them listening to the wild, breathing world just beyond the porch. Together they had found their place, not by closing the door on danger, but by opening it to courage, compassion, and the uncertain, beautiful truth that wildness can be closer than you think. And as the moon climbed high and the last bee vanished into the night, Evan knew this would be the memory he'd carry always. Father and daughter, arm in arm, watching the wild slip gently back where it belonged, forever changed by a summer that had stung them, but healed them too.